weeks, and college football has been nuts. We fired a coach. We had some crazy reporting. LSU actually, Memphis 2 weeks ago, the theme of our segment was run the ball. Hell, LSU found a way to run the ball this week against Florida.
And they won, right?
And they won, which is nuts. But I do right. But I do got to ask you this, and we'll get to some LSU and some other teams in the SEC later on. But I really want to go down your top 16 because last time we had you, we really didn't break that down because too many things were going on. Let's just stick around the top 4 really quickly. I know that Georgia's probably going to be number 1. I know Iowa's probably going to be out after a loss to Purdue. But Memphis, I don't know how else to say this, but is Cincinnati your number 2? Tell the people who's your top 4.
Number 2. Cincinnati's my number 2 based on performance alone because I don't know if Cincinnati can beat a lot of these other teams. We'll see. I mean, we saw Cincinnati play Georgia last year, right? We saw the Fiesta Bowl. We saw Georgia win by a field goal. And I'm like, okay, is this the same? Cincinnati brought back almost everybody, that they had last year. But this Georgia team's just that much better this year. So I don't know. There are 2 teams that I don't think that Cincinnati has a chance beating right now. And Ohio State and Alabama. I can't envision Cincinnati winning against those 2 programs. I think they could actually pick off Oklahoma. I really do. I think that would be a good game. I think that game in my mind makes sense. It's probably going to be close. The other 2 in Georgia, no, we've seen that before.
Right. So Spence, it just feels like, and to me, at the end, it's probably going to be Alabama. It's probably going to be Georgia, but Alabama has a loss already. Even though Alabama has a loss, I mean, do you still kind of find a way to start getting them back in the top 4 because of how they're performing now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen this before. We've seen Alabama not go to the SEC championship and get in, right? All they had to do was win the rest of their games. They didn't go because, of their loss to whoever it was, Auburn or whoever.
Right.
But the College Football Playoff Committee said that's still one of the top 4 teams in the nation. And they weren't wrong. So Alabama a one-loss Alabama still gets in most years. You could say the same for a one-loss Ohio State. We've seen it with them as well. Those are the 2 teams that year in and year out, one loss doesn't hurt them, especially if it's early.
And look, college football is still always chalky. And even though we've had some crazy games, even though we've had some crazy losses, it still always comes down to what feels like maybe not Clemson. There may be the one team out for 1 year. But it's going to be Alabama. It's going to be Georgia. But Oklahoma's still undefeated. And look, it kind of feels like Spencer found a pulse with Caleb Williams, good googly moogly, and they found a running game. It's funny how that kind of works when your scheme changes up, just throwing it out there. We have the 4 teams right now, but is there anybody out of the top 4, in your opinion, that you're like, yeah, but Penn State or Ohio State might be able to sneak their way back up in there? For example, if Ohio State just continues to clean the clock and they continue to wipe people out, do they find a way to
yes.
I hate to say this about Cincinnati because they're number 2 in a lot of people's polls, but do they find a way to get them the group of 5 out and put the chalky 4 back in?
In my humble opinion, I don't think that this playoff was created for any non-Power 5 team to be in. As a matter of fact, I really only think that this playoff was created for maybe 20 teams, and LSU is one of them. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the top 20 teams in recruiting that are always there, that's really who this playoff was created for.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't created for Boise State or Cincinnati or even Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has had a great season, a fantastic season, but I don't even know if they'll let Oklahoma State in this thing. And the only way I can't, especially Mike Gundy, he's done a fantastic job. I think Mike Gundy is going to be up for some maybe a change here soon. He's a fantastic coach, but I don't think they're going to let Oklahoma State in this thing. Cincinnati and Oklahoma State, I have in my top 4 right now based on, hey, they're undefeated. Oklahoma State walked into Texas, beat them, left with a sandwich. And, I'm like, okay, well, you're cleaning up on your resume. If you beat Oklahoma, I don't see why you don't get in, other than the fact that you got Ohio State over here. You got Alabama over here. And the college football playoff, I'm a broadcaster. You're a broadcaster. You know what you're considering when you're putting people on. We want the ratings. We're selling advertising. That's really the bottom line here. And when they're making that decision, can we justify putting Alabama and Ohio State into this college football playoff over Cincinnati and over Oklahoma State? I think they get there. Now, maybe not Michigan, maybe not Michigan State if one of them go undefeated or something like that. But we've seen it before. We've seen Wisconsin, a 13-1 Wisconsin, get kicked to the curb for Ohio State. We've seen, other worthy teams. Baylor, poor Baylor. Baylor and TCU one year, they're like, hey, we have better records than everybody else. Sorry, Alabama's probably the team we want in there. Why would we want your, small fan bases? I know it looks good, but we're going to keep you out. So yeah, there's some nuance to this as well. And I think that those two teams, if Ohio State and Alabama lose again, then they're out. But in my mind, they're still in this until they have the second loss, because over the history of this college football playoff, those are the two teams that have gotten in without playing a championship game and with one loss. I know.
It's an interesting dilemma. And look, these things are going to play themselves out. And I think that I do think because of the way Ohio State got beat down in Oregon, maybe if one of those Big 12 teams finds a way to win, maybe they do it. I mean, but it's a very interesting thing. And look, the playoff expansion committee or whoever meets on that, they want this. Like you're seeing flags being thrown on horseshit calls because they want the most chaos with one-loss teams. Like I'm watching the Iowa Purdue game, okay, and I'm
right.
Man, in the first quarter, I'm like, bro, I might have played O-line my whole life, but that kid from Iowa ain't holding. Like that shit is like Bush League, and I'm like. Man, and look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't sit up on YouTube and watch conspiracy theories on TikTok.
Right.
But good googly moogly, they got me thinking that I'm just going to throw that out there. But look, Ole Miss is a team that gets a lot of traction. They do have the one loss to Alabama, but they do have somewhat of a favorable schedule going down. Now they got LSU this week. God forbid you don't know what team you're going to get from week to week, but they do somewhat have a favorable schedule moving forward for the rest of the season. If they're a team that runs the rest of the table, because look, you got Mississippi State, you got a down LSU. If they can win out with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, which everyone believes Matt Corral may be right now at this given moment, then what do? Do you keep a team? Because here's a hypothetical scenario, Memphis, that I play in my head. Say Alabama and Georgia go to the SEC championship game, Alabama gets beat. Do you leave another SEC team out? That's just a question I have. But where do you see Ole Miss right now presently?
So Ole Miss would be the team that possibly, I haven't looked at their schedule, but they may be a one-loss team that gets to the SEC championship against a one-loss Alabama. Have they played? Yeah, they have played. They have played, and they lost Alabama against a one-loss Alabama. They get there, and they may even win. Then what do you do? What do you do with a one-loss Georgia, a one-loss Ole Miss, and a one-loss Alabama? You probably are going to take Alabama, and you're probably going to take Georgia, and Ole Miss is, at home eating chips. And those are the things that happen. I think just because they lost Alabama. And there are scenarios that maybe, just maybe, Ole Miss gets in, but they're one of those teams, just like Oklahoma State, that are on the fringes. Like, we don't really want them in. Their fan base isn't really that big. Half of them are are Memphis fans anyway. We don't really we don't want them in. But that being said, I mean, I don't even think Ole Miss really gets past LSU this weekend. If LSU plays like they did against Florida and run the ball, it's funny. We were sitting there thinking, like, both of us, we were looking at the lines like, got a top 3 recruiting class, a top 4 recruiting class. There's nothing wrong with the actual personnel. Why aren't they running the football? And it kind of, I'm sure it frustrated all of you LSU fans, but I was sitting there like, I don't understand this. Why aren't they running the football? All of these teams have had success, especially against Florida. Look what Kentucky did against Florida. They're having success running the football. Why don't they just run the football and you come out with the win? You can do the same thing against Ole Miss. That's one of their weaknesses. Right. Tennessee exposed them. So I don't even think I don't think we're going to have that problem. I think Ole Miss is going to end up with another loss before the end of the season. But say, there's a 1-loss Ole Miss that somehow gets in the SEC championship against Georgia. And, they play them, and all of a sudden you're like, well, and I don't think that'll happen because they lost to Alabama. A 1-loss Alabama would go over them. But it's I don't see a path really for Ole Miss with the 1 loss that they have against Alabama, unless Alabama loses. If Alabama has the second loss, then there's a conversation. But it's really Alabama, Georgia, probably Ohio State. Because the way Michigan State played against Indiana, I was like, I didn't like that turnout. It was a win, but it was ugly. It's kind of like one of those ugly wins that Oklahoma was getting. Right. Same ugly win.
Sometimes you just gotta stay alive and get those ugly wins because at some point you're gonna have them. I mean, a lot of my friends that I'm close with in 19. They're telling me, oh, Blake, we're about to blow out Auburn and Memphis. I mean, I've told my listeners this before. I mean, LSU only won 23-20. I'm like, listen, we're going to beat Alabama. We're in a dogfight against Auburn just because of their front. And we'll go into a little bit of LSU and Florida. I'll get your thoughts on Dan Mullen really quickly, and then we'll get you on out of here. But when you see offensive line that has, when a team drops back 52 times and they only give up 2 sacks, and then everybody says that you can't run the football, I'm like, man, I know for a damn fact because I've been in those trenches. It's harder to pass block 1-on-1 against a guy like a Will Anderson in Alabama. Like that's tougher to me than just staying in front of him and hopefully my running back can find a hole. I think LSU gets back to what they were doing. They're going to run counters. They're going to run inside zone, outside zone, run the RPOs off of it. And that's how they beat Florida. But let's take a look at Florida. A lot of Florida fans, look, they were 20th in the country on a lot of people's polls. I know you guys do the top 16. But, man, how they have fallen. Spence, is Dan Mullen even on the hot seat after losing to a coach that literally just got fired?
Maybe. And it's just maybe because they've been making these. They don't want to slip into the Texas/Tennessee bucket or USC for that matter. You can get, or FSU, you can get behind on these contracts, and if you're raising, more than $20 million from your boosters to get rid of somebody and hire somebody else, and that happens every 3 years, it's not good accounting. It's not good math. No. And there are a lot of programs that even Texas, which is one of the most prosperous, that are behind the 8 ball on a lot of these contracts. FSU is in the same situation. I think that Dan Mullen at least gets another year because, I mean, they were just in the SEC championship game.
Season ago.
Yeah. But I think this is a year of reprieve. He gets another year. If he's not, truly competing for a SEC championship, then maybe they make a move. I don't think he's on the hot seat just yet. I think
we do have one fan question for you right here, and I thought it was Daniel Glenn asked, #AskMemphis. Odds on Miami, Nebraska, Arizona State. I don't think the only reason he put in Arizona State because of the things that are around Herm. in that program. But we'll leave that one out for now because they're not going to fire him off of performance. And Florida State jobs coming open this year. Are there any things that you're hearing around those jobs possibly opening up?
Miami, maybe.
You hear something. I know that look. It's like, I got to be careful here. I know that look.
Miami is that's a definite maybe. There's even it's interesting because Orgeron might actually end up there. Seriously, Orgeron might end up in Miami.
Don't tell me
if that happens. I'd be like, well, because and I don't know how you feel about this, Blake. I know he has to. I know there were some personal things. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're closer to the situation than I do. I don't know if he covered up rape. Maybe he did. I see that going around. Maybe he did. If he did, he has to go. Mm-hmm. The personal things, though, in my opinion, sometimes you can forgive that stuff, especially when you have a national champion. There are only a handful, maybe 5 coaches that have won a national championship that are still coaching.
Right.
It's hard to replace that. It's always who are you going to get to replace this guy? And what your expectations are for the person. If you expect to be back in the national championship game very soon, that's probably not the case. It took Orgeron a few years to get back there. Nobody's going to come in, plug and play, be back, in a national championship game day one or year one. Maybe year 3, but not year 1. I don't know who you. This is going to be Woodward's going to earn his money.
Oh, no doubt.
He's going to earn his money right here. And he hires guys that win national championships. So, I think that it's going to be a really tough time replacing Ed. He was a guy that really fit the culture there. I know there was some bad blood between him and the media there. I understand that, and I understand where that may lead in terms of the writing and everything else. But he's going to be very hard. But I am hearing a little bit of a noise about Jimmy Sexton. Well, here's something interesting that Jimmy Sexton is the agent for almost all these guys, right?
Correct.
Almost all these guys. The only guy that's actually in the picture right now that Jimmy Sexton's not the agent for is Neil Cornish. Or Mel Tucker, and Neil Cornish is his agent. But Jimmy Sexton's in for Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, all those guys. And of course, Sexton, you probably know this too. He lives in Memphis, so I get a smidgen. I get crumbs of what might happen.
Is there anything that you can divulge?
No, there's nothing I can divulge. There are crumbs that I haven't really, followed up on. Like, does this make sense? But Orgeron to Miami is something that I heard from somebody. So it's not really, it's more of a rumor than anything else. But who the rumor came from made my ears perk up. And you've been in this business long enough. There are people that you listen to, and there are people that are, whatever, you're blowing smoke.
Preach.
And that's part of the game. That's part of the game. A lot of these, what on the media side, there are people that are specifically blowing smoke for ADs during their coaching search. They're like, hey, we'll leak this name to you. You do something on this, throw them off the trail, and we're going over here.
It's exactly what Scott Woodward literally did 6 months ago on Baseball Search.
There you go.
Right.
But you do that to keep those cards close to your vest. You don't want, you want everybody looking, somewhere else. You want everybody else, the Scooby-Doo people just running around, following the mystery machine while you're over here, talking to coach that you actually want to talk to. You throw people off the trail on purpose. Woodward, he's one of the best at doing that. But where there is a little, I did hear a little something about where Orgeron may end up next, and that might be Miami. So for the Miami might be open at the end of the season. Let's put it like that.
So you mean to tell me that a blonde-haired woman would be okay if Orgeron brought down to Miami? Oh, don't answer that. Don't answer that. I'll leave it be. I'll leave
With
it.
everything that went on at LSU, let's put it like this: they wouldn't blink an eye in Miami.
Bingo.
Not at all. What he's doing right now fits the culture of Miami, and that's when I started thinking, like, they may not even care about all of the stuff going on there at LSU right now. As long as it didn't have, as long as there's some PR and he's not tied to anybody getting raped or anything like that, any sexual assaults. If it's just, running around with women and everything else, I mean, it's Miami, right? That's what goes down in Miami. So it makes sense. It makes sense when I heard I was like, oh, destination for Ed, Miami. Oh, that actually I was like, well, let me, I haven't really, I just heard that earlier this morning, and I was like, oh, maybe I should follow up on this, because this sounds more from who it came from. I was like, this guy's been in the business 20 something years. He's not throwing things around for nothing. This may be credible, but I don't know if it is. I haven't spoken to anybody that knows, that's on Sexton's team there in Memphis. I don't know, but that might be where he ends up. Who's going to end up there? I have the slightest idea.
That's why we bring you on. Look, the Rudy Crew chat is absolutely buzzing right now about this, and I know it's something that we're going to have to be talking about. But regardless, Memphis, brother, you're always fantastic. Tell everybody where they can catch everything that you're doing, where they can follow you on social media and things like that.
Follow me at Memphis Spence on social media. You can listen to my show, Sports Radio America, noon to 2 Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. Just go to either sportsradioamerica.com or get the TuneIn app and just look up Sports Radio America. You'll find it. Click on it. There are a lot of people that listen. Also, if you just follow me on Twitter, because that's where I'm the most active. I have a Facebook, but I'm not really there. Follow me on Twitter, and I tweet it out right before the show, about 10, 15 minutes right before the show. You can listen to the live stream of the radio broadcast there.
Awesome, my brother. You kill it like always, and I can't wait till next Tuesday, or not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. And look,